Remember those catchy jingles that seemed to play on a loop in your mind long after the show ended? The faint whir of the dial as you searched for your favorite program, only to be greeted by a familiar voice selling soap flakes, kitchen gadgets, or the latest family sedan. These were moments that became part of the rhythm of daily life. 60s TV commercials were more than just interruptions. They were miniature time capsules, blending cheerful optimism with clever slogans and unforgettable tunes. The grainy black and white images, the sincere smiles of spokespeople, and the aroma of freshly brewed instant coffee in the ad break, each detail painted a vibrant picture of American dreams and aspirations. Can you recall the charm of those animated mascots, or the way a certain detergent promised to make whites brighter, all in under 60 seconds? These commercials showcased not just products, but also the spirit of a changing nation. If you close your eyes, do the words "I'd like to buy the world a Coke" spring to mind? Let's tune in and rediscover the magic, the messages, and the nostalgia that made 60s commercials truly unforgettable. Step back into an era before color burst onto our screens, when America's living rooms glowed with the silver shimmer of black and white television, and an entire nation's attention could be captured by a 15-second jingle. The world of 60s TV commercials sprang from fertile ground, shaped by the technological leaps and cultural optimism of the late 1940s and 50s, practically evolving alongside television itself. But by the 1960s, TV advertising wasn't just a novel way to hawk household goods. It had become the new language of aspiration, family life, and even social change. Imagine the early days, when television was a weekly treat rather than a constant companion. Advertisers saw its potential from the get-go. The very first TV commercial, a simple ad for Bulova watches, aired back in 1941 during a Brooklyn Dodgers-Philadelphia Phillies baseball game. It cost all of $9 for 10 seconds. Hard to believe, isn't it, when we remember how saturated the airwaves would later become? Yet just 2 decades later, commercials weren't simply tacked onto programs, they practically shaped them. Many of us recall that whole shows came brought to you by one brand, often mentioned by the host or woven into skits. Ed Sullivan, for instance, would pause his variety show to praise a word from our sponsor, treating product plugs as part of the night's entertainment. The rise of the commercial echo chamber in the 1960s didn't happen overnight. A big leap came with the expansion of national broadcasting. As more American families brought televisions into their homes, by the early 1960s over 90% owned a set, the potential audience for advertisers exploded. No longer did they need to rely on print or radio alone to get their message across. Imagine your family gathered around, the static fading, and suddenly that chipper woman in pearls appeared, promising that your dishes could sparkle with the latest liquid detergent. And what changed the game most? The hard sell of the 1950s gradually gave way to something both more familiar and more insidious, the soft sell of the 60s, where ads aimed not just for your wallet, but for your heart. Commercials of this era were carefully tailored to embody what was happening in society at the time, whether that meant touting the convenience of frozen dinners to busy homemakers, or flattering Dad's image with rugged cars and aftershave. You might be surprised to learn that children's commercials were still in their infancy at the dawn of the 1960s. Saturday morning cartoon blocks were just barely coming into their own, and with them came a new wave of sugary cereal and toy ads, bright, engaging, and utterly persuasive. Remember begging for that particular breakfast cereal or that dazzling new toy, convinced it would transform your everyday world. The shift toward targeting children with advertising was one of the decade's most significant and perhaps controversial developments. Before the 60s, toys had to fight for space in the Sears Roebuck Christmas catalogue. Now they had a direct line to young imaginations via TV. viewer habits were also changing rapidly. In the early part of the decade, sponsor spots meant that one company essentially paid for the whole program and received deep integration, including actors using their products right on the air. By mid-decade, a new structure emerged, the magazine format. Instead of one main sponsor, programs featured a series of shorter ads from multiple companies, with commercial breaks now punctuating the action, like beats in a familiar tune. This brought a more rapid-fire, punchy kind of commercial message into American homes. When did you first notice that shift? When the breaks became busier, the slogans catchier, and the sponsors more varied? Here's something you might not have known. Before cigarettes were banned from broadcast advertising in 1971, tobacco companies were some of the era's biggest spenders. The smooth-voiced Marlboro Man or the friendly doctors touting one brand of cigarette over another might seem shocking by today's standards, but back then their ads ran side by side with commercials for breakfast cereals and new laundry detergents. In fact, the very first televised image of a lit cigarette came courtesy of a 1949 Camel ad. By the 60s, such images were woven seamlessly into primetime TV life. Did any particular slogan or jingle from those commercials stick with you, however surprising the product might seem now? The early 1960s also witnessed a unique partnership between Madison Avenue advertising agencies and major consumer brands. Some of the most unforgettable commercials were the handiwork of legendary agencies like Doyle Dane Bernbach and Leo Burnett, who pioneered catchy jingles and invented whole advertising mascots. Can you picture the tidy image of Mr. Clean or the reassuring tone of the Folgers coffee couple? Their creative teams would gather to brainstorm taglines and concepts that often defined not just the product, but the very spirit of the era. Television advertising even helped drive cutting-edge trends in animation. Classic characters like Tony the Tiger and Toucan Sam didn't just come to life in cereal commercials, they became cultural icons, featured on lunchboxes and in schoolyard chatter across the country. It was an early example of cross-media marketing, blending cartoon fantasy with the reality of the American breakfast table. Which animated ad character holds the most vivid place in your memory? The growing muscle of TV advertisers also led to new discussions about taste and decency. Community standards were still fairly conservative. A kitchen-cleaning housewife was acceptable, but the slightest suggestion of suggestive humor was likely to draw protest letters. In fact, the networks would often ask advertisers to reshoot or recut their commercials if they seemed too edgy or provocative. Even the appearance of a woman wearing pants instead of a skirt could be seen as radical depending on geography and time slot. The boundaries would steadily be pushed in the years ahead, as we'll see. By the time the decade reached its midpoint, television commercials had completely transformed the advertising playbook. No longer just a means to sell products, they became encrypted with ideas about family, success, and belonging. You probably remember the anticipation of a brand new high-budget commercial during a holiday special or Sunday night movie. Sometimes the commercials themselves were as memorable as the programs they interrupted. But as the 1960s gained momentum, TV advertising would become even more sophisticated, leveraging new technologies, bolder visual styles, and the power of color television to captivate hearts and wallets alike. How did these rapid technological advances and cultural shifts transform the very look, feel, and sound of TV commercials? Join me next as we explore the dazzling rise of color broadcasts and the invention of the modern jingle, and discover how commercials of the latter 1960s invited viewers into a whole new sensory world. As we wind down our journey through the unforgettable world of 1960s TV commercials, it's impossible not to pause and appreciate the distinct charm and creativity that defined those classic spots. We began with the black and white beginnings, when sponsors brought an entire family into their living rooms through the magic of a catchy jingle or the trustworthiness of a friendly pitchman. We recalled how ads were seamlessly woven into the fabric of our favorite programs, how animated mascots like Tony the Tiger and Mr. Clean didn't just sell products but carved out their own permanent places in our cultural landscape. As color television blossomed, commercials became even more vibrant, pulling us in with bright sets, memorable tunes, and families that felt just like ours, sitting around the breakfast table, pouring cereal or sipping the best part of waking up. Who could forget the playful jingles that transformed the most ordinary products into household essentials, or the earnest spokesman who promised better lives and easier days with just the twist of a cap or push of a button? Beyond the products themselves, these commercials mirrored the values and dreams of an entire nation. They captured that spirit of optimism, a belief that every soap could brighten, every snack could delight, and every new car could take your family somewhere special. Watching them now, you can almost feel the warmth radiating from the tube, recall the laughter at the dinner table, or remember the determined sparkle in the eye of a pitchwoman, convincing you this time the brighter wash was truly possible. The ingenuity of the advertising agencies and the actors, sometimes household names, sometimes just familiar faces, gave these commercials a staying power that goes far beyond their original 60-second slot. But perhaps what endures most is the way these commercials became part of our shared memory. They've stitched together generations with the common thread of catchy melodies and clever catchphrases. Whether you watched these ads as a child begging for that sugary cereal, a parent making the family grocery list, or someone simply enjoying the escapism of a well-told story, 60s TV commercials left their mark. Looking back, don't you find it remarkable how some of these slogans still roll off the tongue decades later? How hearing just a few familiar notes can bring back the smell of Sunday mornings, the comfort of family evenings, or that feeling of excitement over something as simple as a new breakfast treat. So now I invite you, what are your favorite memories of TV commercials from the 1960s? Was there a particular jingle that made its way into family sayings? Did a certain animated mascot become a household favorite? Or perhaps you remember a product that really did change the way your family lived, all because you saw it on TV? Share your story in the comments, and let's take a stroll down memory lane together. Don't forget to like this video if reliving these vintage ads brought a smile to your face, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more nostalgic journeys. You might even want to share this with friends or loved ones who remember the golden days of television right alongside you. There are plenty more memories waiting just around the corner. Because in the end, 60s TV commercials were more than simple sales pitches. They were keys to an era of hope, humor, and togetherness. As those familiar jingles used to say, things go better when we remember them together.